If you have ever thought about ditching social media marketing but being a bit scared of what impact it might have on your business, then you'll want to listen to this episode because I am talking to a design queen who has defined the norm, ditched socials, and hasn't looked back. This might be that little bit of inspiration that you've been looking for.
Welcome to Sales Without Socials. If you too are mentally exhausted from the constantly changing algorithms, you're not getting a return on the blood, sweat, and tears you put into your social media efforts, and know there must be a better way to market your business, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Tanya Williams. I love pink, wearing 4-inch heels, and being the sparkly chief of everything at Digital Conversations. In the last 6 months, I have transformed my business growth by doubling down on the marketing strategies that actually work, and that doesn't include Facebook ads, Reels, or silly TikToks. So if you're like me and you're sick of being on the social media hamster wheel and want to focus your time on marketing strategies that don't suck your time without a result, then make sure you subscribe and keep listening. Are you with me? Let's dive in. And you know what? Let's have a little bit of fun along the way.
I'm excited to announce that the waitlist is now open for our upcoming webinar, Swap Social Media for Sales. This free training is for people who are exhausted by the social media hamster wheel, and it is especially for B2B service-based business owners. If you are sick of spending hours every week trying to get results on social, just hear crickets on your posts and wonder why it isn't working, and you want to learn how you can spend less time marketing but get better results, then this is the training for you. Go to saleswithoutsocials.com.au/free webinar, register, and stay tuned for details. Hello, everybody. It is Tanya Williams here, Chief of Everything at Digital Conversations, and I have another episode of the Sales Without Socials podcast for you today. And I got a great one for you today. I've been talking about businesses doing business without social media, right? And I have got someone who has been through that process and done it herself, and she has never looked back. And today I am talking to Kylie Harbour from Tiny Giraffe. Now, she has a really cool business. You have to go and look at Tiny Giraffe. If you're creative, especially like me, you will love what she does. And I'm going to let her explain in more detail. But Kylie, welcome to the Sales Without Socials podcast.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to explain to people who you are and what your business is? Because it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a bit different, isn't it? I am the artist and founder behind Tiny Giraffe, and Tiny Giraffe is an art and design studio based here in sunny Brisbane. And I specialize in wallpapers and custom wallpaper murals. So, yeah, I just love transforming commercial and residential spaces. And yeah, it's a high touch, high end service, done for you. I walk you through it. It's very collaborative if you want it to be. So it's a really joyful experience for me and the client to bring this amazing creation to life, to transform a space.
Yeah, and look, I love that. I've got a pretty fantastic mural downstairs in my living area, and I see it was hand painted, and I totally agree that it transforms the space amazingly, and it's a conversation starter. I have
Yes, yes.
been on interviews, on TV interviews and stuff when it had that, like sitting in front of that. And I've had people say to me, I remember Carl from Today was like, oh my God, that's the best background we have ever seen all through COVID. And I'm like, I know, right? So people notice it when I've got people come to my house, they look at it and go, oh my God, what an amazing wall. So I know firsthand how cool having a really like clever, different wall or room or whatever it might be is in your business and in your house. Like it really is transformative. I sit there and look at it every single night, and I'm looking at new things. I just love it. It's just fantastic. So I
Yes,
totally
I've seen yours. It's fabulous. I love it. New York City vibes.
yes. So we could talk about art all day, I'm sure, because I'm an art lover. But tell me a bit more about the business. How long have you had Tiny Giraffe for?
Look, I launched Tiny Giraffe in 2016, but it was a passion project that turned into a side hustle that turned into a full business. So I only really went full time 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't realize how hard being a full-time business owner is. So yeah, I would say 2 years. I still feel early on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, when you've been working were you working for in a full-time job before that for someone else? Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
shock to the system when you do that, and then all of a sudden you come out and you're like, "Awesome, I'm my own boss," and then you're like, "Oh, hang on,
Whoa, what now?
for everything."
Yeah. I was working as a landscape architect, so that's my background. So I've been designing for 20 years, and obviously, like I learned a lot in corporate land. Working for other people, writing bids and tenders, and winning work, and working with clients. So it was like I knew it all, but when it came to my own business, it was still felt like starting from scratch in a lot of ways.
It absolutely does, doesn't it? So when
Yeah.
you first started the business, so you've been in a couple of years now, what were the strategies or the marketing strategies that you used to get yourself out there?
Yeah, well, back in 2016 was when I kind of launched Tiny Draft, and social media was huge back then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger, but that was like the earlier days, and of course, my go-to. That was my go-to strategy, was to just get my work out there and start sharing it on platforms like Instagram, Facebook. I think I even tried a Twitter account. I don't know why. It's a visual business. I tried everything. Pinterest. Yeah. But Instagram was the big one. And back then in 2016, I was also selling my work at markets. That's how I got started, at the Paddington markets in Sydney. When I was living in Sydney, there I started Tiny Draft when I was there. So yeah.
Back in 2016, I mean, social media looked quite different then. We're talking, God, what's that, like 6 years ago or something? So
Yeah.
6, 7 years ago.
7 years. It's Tiny Draft for 7 years this year.
I need to later out.
I'm starting to feel really old.
But yeah, like it was really different 7 years ago because the organic algorithms were. Oh, I can't even speak this.
I know my voice is croaky between the two of us.
The algorithms were so much different. Like the landscape was so much different. It wasn't as focused on business. Like it was a very different look and feel to what it is these days.
Yeah.
So you would actually get a bit of traction on.
Did. I got great traction back then
Yeah.
for about a year or two, a couple of years. Yeah. And actually, it probably set me up for a bit of failure, because I don't think I told you this previously, but my very first big mural project came from a client on Instagram. His wife saw my art prints, and she was like, she sent him my details, and he landed in my inbox one day, and that's how they found me. But that's never happened ever since. So it's a totally different world out there now on socials.
Yeah, it is. And look, it's getting harder and harder because,
Harder and harder.
you know, algorithms and attention spans being so short, and we get stuck in scroll holes, and there's like, and it's, to really do it well, you've got to spend a lot of time on it, and it's
Yeah.
exhausting. And you're trying to run a business and do all the other stuff,
Yeah.
and spending ridiculous amounts of hours creating content and putting it up on social media is just not the right way for most businesses. There are some businesses, yes, it really works its butt off for.
Yeah.
Service-based businesses, typically it's probably usually the worst performing platform when you look
Yeah.
at the ROI on it as well. So when did
Absolutely.
you start to see it change? So you said the first couple of years, it's sort of you've got that traction and you felt like it was sort of doing something for you, and then what after that it sort of slowly die off? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think it also helped. Growing my Instagram was easier back then because I was at the markets too. So I was
Yeah.
talking to people every weekend, and then they would say, where can I see more of your work? And I had a website, but it was pretty basic, so I sent them to my Instagram, and that's, I got again, it comes, that word of mouth is still the most important thing, because talking to people has led them to my Instagram. So that's how it grew. I would say it died off around 2019, 2020.
Yep.
Yeah, probably 2019, because that was getting harder and harder to, people that had followed me weren't even seeing my stuff or liking it or
Yeah.
sharing it at all. Yeah.
How much time were you spending, like, back then, like, creating content, sharing, engaging, all that sort of stuff on your social channels?
Way too much time. I'd be embarrassed to say. Maybe a day or two a week. Like,
Oh,
when you
Lord.
add up all the hours, it's
Yeah.
a little, it's and this is what I think social media is a bit dangerous. It it chews up half an hour there and an hour there, and
Hmm.
before you know it, you've probably lost a day or two to the platform every week.
Yeah.
And then that's just scrolling, sharing, talking to people. I mean, when you start adding in the content creation, it yeah, it could be up to 3 days. Like that's a huge chunk of the week.
Oh, massive chunk of the week. And it's like that's time that could be spent doing other marketing that's more effective or getting out and talking to people and
Yeah,
generating, work in other ways. And that is the danger of it, I think, is it doesn't seem like much. You're like, "Oh, I've just been on there for 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever." But as
yeah.
you add all that time up and then you go, "Oh, crap, like that's actually a lot of
It's a lot.
time over a week that's just not well spent."
It's pretty scary when you look at the screen time. That's
No.
when that's when it all comes out in the wash.
I get my updates each week. It's like, "Oh, how much time did I spend online?"
Yeah, yeah. So
Um,
I'm watching it go down and down and down over the years, and that's really good.
so when did you decide, to go, "You know what? This is not working. I need to find a better way, or I need to start to scale back." Like, what did that look like for
Yeah.
that process?
Well, I'm a slow learner, I must say. I was still doing I was still trying to do Instagram even up until mid last year. So
Mhm.
I'm actually, yeah, this April is 2 years in business full time for me. So I didn't really officially, technically tell myself that I started. I started in like July. Like I've been looking at the financial years now.
Yeah.
So at the end of my first proper financial year, which was June 2022, so last year, that's when I sat down and looked at everything for my business. How did my first year in business go? And that's that's when I cried because I looked at all the work I did. Who were my clients? What were the projects? Which ones did I enjoy the most? Who were the clients I enjoyed the most? Um, how much money did I make? Sorry, and just I realized where was my work coming from, and it wasn't coming from Instagram. So that was a shock.
Yeah. And I think that's an exercise that not a lot of people actually do.
Oh,
Um,
really?
to a couple of people at the end of last year about reviewing the year and so forth. And I said, the easiest thing that you can do is look at who your clients are now,
Yeah,
or even the clients you've had during the year, and go, where did they come from?
yeah,
Like, what channels did they come from? Was it a referral? Was it LinkedIn? Was it like whatever it was? And that's where you should be spending your time, because if that's where your business is coming from, why are you spending hours on Facebook or spending hours on Facebook ads and all this money on Facebook ads when it's not working? But you can see where your business is coming from when you just look at your client base. It is so
yeah.
obvious and so simple, but so many people just don't even do that simple exercise. So and it's a bit scary and eye-opening when you do it, isn't it? You're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, but it's so helpful, and I think it sets the course for a better direction. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I took the time because it's so easy in business to just keep going. There's a lot happening, to not stop and reflect. Yeah.
So what did you find then? So you said it wasn't coming from Instagram. Where did you look like go, "Well, this is where my business is coming from?"
Yeah. My clients were coming from friends and word of mouth. So it was all word of mouth, basically.
Yep.
Some very beautiful friends put the word out about my business in the beginning, and their friends and family hired me. So and then colleagues as well. I put out a LinkedIn post or two, and colleagues from a long time ago, and even people that I studied with that I necessarily haven't worked with, but
Yeah.
they know my skills and what I'm capable of, recommended me. So definitely word of mouth.
So it was really the people that you knew or that were in your network in some way that was
Yeah,
actually what was generating the sales for you.
yeah, absolutely.
Love
Yeah,
it. What were you a little bit afraid? I hear this often where people talk about there's some people that quit social media altogether and they're like, right, I've just dumped it. So totally I'm never using it again for personal business. And sometimes there can be a little bit of a fear around, oh my God, what happens if I leave Facebook or Instagram and no one can see, my business? Like, what is that going to do? Because my competitors are there. And was there
yeah,
a bit of fear or anxiety around that for you?
yeah. I mean, I still have a little bit of that. It's taking me months to sort of scale back my Instagram and Facebook posting.
Yeah.
And it's just habit because I was doing it so often. It's really hard to change a habit. So I'm kind of just trying to scale back and remind myself, why am I posting? What do I want to share? What do I really want to say? So if I don't post as often, that's okay. And as for, I guess fear of missing out or not being on there, um, I keep trying to tell myself that the people that matter are already on my email list. I've brought them across
Yeah.
from socials to my email list. So there's people on there that I know that really genuinely care about me and my work. And if they haven't come across, then maybe they're not my person. So
That's so true. And
that's
that's
okay.
a great way to look at it. There's a couple of things there, like, yeah, pulling people from your social channels over to your own database is so, so important. People forget to do that. They go, oh, awesome, I've got 5,000 fans. It's like, yeah, but how many of them are actually qualified
Yeah.
and quality people that you want? It's all well and good. You can have all the fans in the world, but unless they're the people that you want to work with, well, like you're talking to people who are never going to buy from you, right?
Yes,
And that's a
exactly.
distinction to make, to go, well, I know where my people are, my tribe, my community. I can talk to them more effectively in perhaps an email blast out to them about a new project or
Yep.
a new offering or whatever it might be than I can by doing that on Instagram. And I know I'm getting I'd rather have 100 really qualified people who need what I do than 10,000 people who are just like, oh yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real mindset shift, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this is the thing, though, I think with social, people are so caught up on the numbers because we've been trained to be caught up on the numbers. So remember
Mm.
when it all first started, everyone was like, oh my God, I've got 10,000 fans and I've got 100,000. And it was all about numbers. It was like numbers, numbers, numbers.
Yeah.
And it's continued to be like that. Oh my God, look at the levels of engagement and the stats, and everything on social is all about a numbers game.
Yep.
So we're so focused on it that we forget about, hang on a minute, it's actually should be about quality,
Yeah.
not the quantity, and we need to be reversed, like literally flipping this equation.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, and that's part of the problem is we've been trained that way by these social channels themselves to be, just
Driven
so
by stats. And I
yeah,
think what that does is take away the personal connection to it.
absolutely.
Each number is an actual person. And, if you put all the people that actually care about you and your work in a room, that's probably a lot of people. I think focusing on the numbers is taking away that human element,
Absolutely.
thinking about them as real people with real problems and real concerns and real hopes and dreams and fears. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think obviously that's why engagement is so important on any channel. It's starting conversations, right? It's starting conversations with people, whether it's a hey, that was awesome, thank you for sharing that, or a hey, I love what you do, I've been a fan. Like you
Yeah.
opening up the dialogue
Yeah.
is the key to any sort of marketing. Yet people want to focus on shiny and bright and fancy and it's just like start a conversation. Like let's
Yeah.
start a conversation somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
It's yeah, and
So
we
much more powerful.
yeah, and I think we tend to wanna overcomplicate it and think, "It can't be that easy." Well, it can be as simple as starting a conversation because that's where every relationship starts from. That's where every business discussion starts from.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
simple
It's scary. I think for a lot of people, and even myself, and I'm a very quite outgoing, even though as an introvert, I'm quite an outgoing person and I love talking to people, but I think it's very easy to sit, you know, behind a screen rather than it is to start a conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've sort of went through, being focused on socials. You've stepped back from that, and
Yeah.
you do less and less of that. What
Yeah.
sort of marketing are you focusing on now for the business?
Well, I've kind of gone back to basics. It might sound a bit basic, a bit simple, but I'm just focused on word of mouth mostly at the
Yeah,
moment,
yeah,
because that's what's been working for me. So that's what I have to follow. And I realized that after 20 years of working in the built environment industry, I have all these amazing connections, these talented people that I've worked with over the years that
yeah,
actually know me, that they can vouch for me. You know, Over the years, I guess one thing I feel like I did right is I connected with every person on LinkedIn that I've
yeah.
ever come across, that I've actually met in person, and that there's a whole bunch of people there that can help advocate for me and my work. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
LinkedIn's a
I'm
really
trying to focus on LinkedIn. I'm trying to focus on in-person conversations. I'm putting myself out there into the community more to talk to people.
yeah.
I'm asking friends to look for places that they see that are being renovated that
Yeah.
that would benefit from my work.
Yeah. So how are you finding like where to have those conversations? Are you just sort of setting up one-to-one meetings? Are you going to networking events? Like what sort of things are you doing?
Yeah, a bit of everything. I do try to get to the Brisbane Business Hub events,
Mhm.
things like that, networking with women in business. But I find for me personally, the one-on-one conversations the most empowering and the most fulfilling. So they're happening mostly over on LinkedIn and uh, yeah, even Messenger, Facebook Messenger, because they're connections of people that I actually know. So they're,
Yeah.
we're already friends on that platform. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then actual like on the phone and talking to people in real life. So if I'm talking to someone at my yoga studio or at the coffee shop or yeah, it doesn't matter where. Yeah.
It's it is so different, I think, after the pandemic and everything was on Zoom and whatever. And look, you can see someone's face and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but it is always different to be in real life, sitting across from someone with a coffee or a wine or whatever it might
Oh
be
yeah.
in
It's the
conversation.
best, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much better. It's more powerful, it's more engaging, like it's just a better conversation, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. I love the fact that you've gone and just gone, I'm just going to put myself out there and just, I'm going to actually go and have conversations because I think social media, I call it a lazy marketing tactic. You
Yeah.
can, I can literally just sit here at my desk and just like chuck a post up or, write some content and throw it up there. It doesn't
Yeah.
really take that much effort as a one-off quick post type thing. But when you think about it as an overall obviously overall that takes a lot of time, but
Yeah.
it actually takes more effort to make a meeting with someone or go to an event and have some quality conversations.
Yeah.
But the thing is about that as well is those conversations are probably going to be better quality and
Yeah.
the better qualified client who's going to pay the money that you need them to pay, and they're going to work with you longer, and they're not going to be focused on I just want the cheapest and all that.
Absolutely.
I think it's a total mindset shift.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you mentioned LinkedIn. I'm a big user of LinkedIn, and I always talk on the podcast about the fact that LinkedIn is very, very different to the likes of our Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everything else that's out there.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is obviously it's been made for business. It was built as a professional network.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn for me is one of my LinkedIn and again that word of mouth are the two biggest channels for me that I'm sort of finding from a business growth perspective.
Yeah.
How are you using LinkedIn? Like, are you sort of posting sort of regularly? Are you doing like newsletters on LinkedIn? Are you doing sort of anything with audio, videos? Like, what sort of tactics are you finding are working best for you?
Um, I'm pretty inconsistent, which is bad, but I'm trying. I'm going to be more in the future.
Yeah.
So I've only really just started focusing on LinkedIn. I built a company. I like set up a company page.
Mhm.
So Tiny Giraffe now only has 170 followers. So please go follow it. But I love to just share my art on there. I'm trying to share once a week, but it hasn't always been happening because I just find LinkedIn so boring. I'm like, I need to inject art into this space. And I think it's helping break up the
Market
feed.
The corporate market, like that makes sense to be on LinkedIn because the people who have got office buildings or they're wanting to renovate or transform, like that's
Yeah.
who they are, right? They can see
Yes.
it and go, hey,
That
let's get Kylie in.
that was the realization I had last year. My clients are busy business people. They're not on LinkedIn. Sorry, they're not on Instagram scrolling or Facebook scrolling. They're busy in their businesses, and if they are scrolling anything for a quick amount of time, it's probably LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Has there been any other sort of tactic or anything else that you've tried that you've found that has worked quite well for you?
Yeah. Look, the big one for me is Google My Business. That's
Ah,
been huge,
yeah.
huge for me. Yeah.
So what have you been doing with Google My Business? Like what have you been putting on there?
Well, the one thing I did well from the beginning is I've been asking customers and clients to share reviews of my work. So back when I was selling art prints in the beginning, I would get customers to write reviews about their artworks that they purchased. And now that I'm taking on, I'm working one-on-one with clients, I get my clients at the end of the project to review via the Google link. So they go leave their review, and then what happens is that if they use keywords like wallpaper mural, that means I get to come up in the search results for that. So if you Google uh, wallpaper Brisbane, I'll
Yeah.
definitely be there. I'll be there in the top 3 results,
Yeah.
which
Without
is amazing.
ads, SEO, or any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's like Google My Business, Google reviews in the Google Maps section basically gives you free SEO.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful, and I don't think people quite realize how well it works. It's bringing me like thousands of views and many leads, like website visits, and yeah.
That's fantastic. One of my guests, Carl Schwantes, does a lot around Google and Google My Business and stuff. And I interviewed him last season.
Oh, I have to go listen.
If you want to know more about Google My Business, you can go and listen to that episode because Carl dives deep into that. But it's one of the things. I know it's not on my radar half the time, and then all of a sudden I go, oh yeah, I should do that again, and then I forget about it again. But I think you need to build it in part of your
It's part of my process. So I have a little process for my projects, and then how they start and how they finish. So it's part of my end part of the project process.
Again, something so simple and
yeah. And look, it's not always easy to get them. You might have to ask a couple of times.
Yeah.
But people are generally really happy to do it for you if you've done a good job.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So given that you've sort of made that shift in what you're doing, how much time has that actually freed up for you, do you think?
Yeah, a huge amount of time. So, if I set aside some, half an hour once a week to write a LinkedIn post and share my artwork, that's nothing. That's the goal for me going forward. I've just come back from an overseas holiday, and I decided that was going to be my new schedule going forward. I'm just trying to find the bravery to do it. But yeah, that's what I want to be doing. So
you've just got to start.
I know.
You can sit and you can procrastinate, you can overthink it, and you can worry about it.
Yeah.
The key to anything is just starting it, doing it. And then you'll learn from that and you go, oh, maybe I'll change this next time or whatever it might be. But, like people are, most people are pretty good on LinkedIn. They're not going to attack you for.
No, they're so supportive. It's great.
Yeah. So what has been your favorite thing about not focusing on those tactics? Like, how has it made you feel as a business owner and as a person not to be so caught up on the hamster wheel and so focused on this social media world? Has it made you feel better? Like, what is
it's made a huge difference. I just feel empowered again, and I feel creative again, because social media sucks up a lot of time, but it also really, I struggle. It just it drains me creatively. So I just find that I lose my inspiration, and I'm much more inspired and ready to create when I'm out in the real world. So if I'm, especially being outdoors, being in nature, traveling, they're the things that inspire me to create my artwork. So it's not being behind a screen and on, scrolling, looking at everybody else's stuff. So yeah, I think calmer, more peaceful, just more empowered, definitely.
It does. And there's been a lot of, I agree with that as well. Like we get so caught up on looking for that red notification button and, oh my God, someone's or they've commented or they've done something. Like we're like monkeys, right? It's like, oh, this we have to grab at it. But
oh my gosh, turn those notifications off.
I know.
If you're not already. I did that.
You're sitting there and you get distracted.
And
you get distracted by them. Then you're looking at your phone, and then you go down the scroll hole, or you're looking at stuff that you shouldn't be doing. Then you've got to jump back into your work because you're like, oh crap, where was I at now? Yeah. So they actually take up more time than you think because of when you add the time in to go, now I've got to get refocused again. And where was I at? Like that's adding time back into your day, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think, the more I'm talking to people about this subject, particularly business owners, they are, it is draining. It's mentally exhausting because there's a lot of comparisonitis that goes on, as we know. So people are looking at other
Yes.
people's stuff and going, "Oh my God, like look what they're doing, and look at all the likes that they've got, and look at this." And they're
Yeah.
a lot of the time you're not comparing apples to apples. You don't know how the other people are doing, how long they've been doing it for.
That's
Are they
right.
actually generating any sales from that? So they might be getting people liking their stuff, but is it actually translating to money in the bank?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff, and then people beat themselves up and go, "I just posted and spent all this time, and I didn't get anyone like it, or I only got 2 likes," and
Yeah.
it affects your brain, like, it affects your mental
Yeah,
stability.
mental health. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's giving me my sanity back. I'm definitely prone to the
Oh, it
comparisonitis
is
because there's so
quite
many talented, beautiful people out there
yeah.
doing amazing things, but doesn't mean that what you have to offer isn't special too. So it's just being in that environment, you can't help but compare. And you're always looking up. You're never looking at the people that aren't doing as well as you, are you? You're never looking
Yeah.
at the artist behind you that's only got 10 followers. So
That's a
um,
that's very true. We're always looking for the bigger, better, shinier, like, how
yeah.
but I wanna be there, and it's like, "Well, hang on a minute, like, you've got to start somewhere as well, right? You've got to take those steps, but there's better places to be doing that than on Instagram."
Yeah, and I think when you're not on socials, it's much easier to look at where you actually are and see how far you've come.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. I love this conversation, Kylie. I just think it's so refreshing to have a chat with someone who has been through all this,
yeah,
um, and go, "Well, I was focused on it over here. I've made this realization that, hey, I'm not getting actually generating any business from this," and
yeah,
be brave enough to go, "You know what? I'm gonna actually change what I'm doing." Because I think that's part of it as well. People are just going, "Oh, I'm just gonna this is what I'm used to. It's easy. I know what to do. Like, I'm just gonna go through the motions." But taking the step to go, I'm going to change what I'm doing because some people don't like change or are not good at change.
yeah. It's
And
hard. Change
yeah,
is hard.
and what is that going to mean for my business? Is a really brave thing to do, and I take my hat off to you for doing that and going. You know what? I've done it, and it isn't actually doing anything bad by not being on Instagram, but it's given me all this time and made me happier and calmer and
It's
all those.
freedom back. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I just think this is such a great conversation. The more of these conversations that we can be having out offline and online and on podcasts and all that sort of stuff, I think is going to
Yeah,
really help more people as well.
yeah, absolutely.
Before we finish, I always like to. I've started this thing where I'm asking my guest to give me a question for the next guest. So I'm going to ask you to give me a question uh,
Yes.
for my next guest.
Well, perhaps in the spirit of Tiny Giraffe, which is all about celebrating travel, where would they like to visit next?
Oh, I like that. A travel question.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have a question from you from my previous guest,
Yep.
which I just realized I didn't give you beforehand. So I'm going to
No,
put you,
I have no idea.
I forgot to put it in the briefing.
Oops.
But my last guest would like to know what has been something that you have had a failure with, I suppose, with a customer. So, say you've had a client and something hasn't gone well and it's been a
Mm.
bit of a failure. What have you done to make that better? Like, how have you made that situation right with that client?
Hmm.
Or have you? Have you just went, I'm going to move on? Or have you done something to,
Yeah. My very, very, very first client, when I went full time, it didn't go well. And to this day, I still don't really understand why. I
yeah,
think perhaps we weren't a good fit. Even though we met for a coffee and we talked about working together and everything seemed to go really well. Um, it was almost like so in the early days I was probably feeling insecure and not charging enough for my work. And so, I told her how many hours that it had taken me to create. And she
yeah.
was like, "Oh, but you only charged me this much." And I was like, "Yeah, but I really value you and I really want this opportunity." And um, I don't do that anymore, by the way. But I, she actually said, "I don't want to continue working with you because, I don't feel like we've had a fair value exchange." And she'd already paid me. She didn't even want to take the work, which I was really offended by. um
Oh,
so I've never had a situation like that ever since. Yeah. I mean, my
So
line art takes a long time. It's just what it is. It's a slow and it's a slow process, but it's really beautiful. And I think it's, I've learned how to charge better for it. But back then I didn't know how. I just said, I tried so hard to refund her. She wouldn't even pick up the phone and have a conversation with me. I just kept trying to call her. Yeah, so that was a really tough one. I
that's
don't know
expensive.
how I could have done it better, but I tried to be, face to face, human to human, and to resolve that. But perhaps we just weren't a good fit. So I had to just let that one go and make peace with the fact that I did my very best on all fronts.
Yeah. And look,
Yeah,
and they're learnings, aren't they? We go,
yeah,
okay, that happened. We learn from it. We have to let it go and just go, I can't dwell on it. I just have to move forward and keep it behind me, because otherwise that sort of stuff can really get to you and
really bring you
add
down. Yeah,
things and anxiety and stuff, when you've just got to go, no, I learnt my lesson and I'm going to do things differently now.
yeah, yep, yep, absolutely. What a big question.
And yeah, I know it was probably a hard one to throw at you,
Maybe
but
I'll change my travel question. That doesn't seem hard enough.
I love your travel question. Oh my God, like I would just find it hard to just pick one place. Like, well, I should say my next big trip is in a few months' time to go to Italy, so that would be my end.
Ah, I'm so envious. That's wonderful. You're gonna have a fabulous time.
So I just want to go everywhere all the time. But
Eat
anyway,
all
that's
the gelato.
fast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I really have valued you coming on and having this conversation, sharing your journey with us in business, and what you've done from a marketing perspective, and the shift that you've made from using social to not using social. I think these are great conversations, and thank you so much. And hopefully we can check in again at some point and see where you're at, to see
Yes.
what else has evolved and changed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful chatting to you, Tanya. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Kylie.
See ya.
If you'd like to learn how to swap social media for sales without feeling the algorithm burn or wasting time on spray and pray tactics that get zero results, then I invite you to join my free training. In it, you're going to learn how you can dump social media and swap it for high impact marketing tactics that don't involve algorithms but do involve growing your bank account, how to get crazy engagement and conversion while posting less than ever without needing years of marketing experience to do it, and 3 critical social media mistakes you're making now and what to do instead. Go to saleswithoutsocials.com.au/free webinar to register and stay tuned for more.